In April 2015, one of the most audacious and unbelievable robberies in modern British history took place right in the heart of London. But this wasn't a story of young, tech-savvy criminals or high-speed chasers like you see in the movies. Instead, it was carried out by a group of elderly men, most of them well into their 60s and 70s. These weren't your typical granddads. They were career criminals who managed to steal millions of pounds in cash, gold, and jewels from one of the most secure locations in the entire city. This is the story of the Hatton Garden heist. Now, to understand the scale of this, you have to know about Hatton Garden. It's London's historic jewelry district, a place synonymous with wealth, glittering diamonds, and private vaults. Beneath one of its seemingly ordinary buildings was a high-security safe deposit facility. This wasn't just any storage unit. It was a fortress used by top jewelers, wealthy investors, and private citizens to store their most valuable possessions. The vault was protected by incredibly thick concrete walls, reinforced steel doors, sophisticated alarm systems, and a web of security cameras. It was considered virtually impenetrable, but the men behind this heist, a group of seasoned veterans, believed they could do the impossible. So, who were these guys? The group had known each other for years, moving in the same criminal circles. Some were lifelong thieves, others were supposedly retired burglars. They were experienced, incredibly patient, and deeply familiar with old-school methods of breaking into secure locations. Unlike modern criminals who might rely on hacking or digital tricks, this crew relied on something more fundamental: time, heavy-duty tools, and a deep-seated trust in their own decades of experience. They were planning a heist straight out of a classic crime film, using brute force and clever timing. Their plan kicked into gear over the long Easter weekend, a time they knew the building and the surrounding area would be unusually quiet and largely empty. They had managed to get their hands on keys and access codes, likely through inside knowledge, which allowed them to simply walk into the building undetected. Once inside, they made their way down to the vault area. The final obstacle standing between them and a fortune in jewels was a reinforced concrete wall, almost half a meter thick. For most, this would have been the end of the line, but not for them. They had brought industrial drilling equipment, and they began the slow, arduous process of cutting right through it. The drilling took hours. Imagine the noise, the dust, the sheer physical effort. It was loud, exhausting, and incredibly risky. At one point, their main drill, a powerful Hilti DD350, overheated and broke down. The younger, less patient crew might have panicked and abandoned the plan right there. But not this team. They calmly packed up, left the building, and went home. The next day, one of them went out and bought new equipment from a tool hire shop, and they returned to the scene of the crime to continue as if it were just another day at the office. Over the course of the weekend, making multiple entries and exits, they eventually carved out a hole just large enough for a person to crawl through. Once inside the vault, they got to work. They used crowbars and other tools to pry open dozens of safety deposit boxes. Box after box revealed a king's ransom, stacks of cash, heavy gold bars, brilliant diamonds, luxury watches, and rare, irreplaceable jewelry. Some individual items were worth tens of thousands of pounds each. Others were priceless family heirlooms, sentimental treasures that could never truly be replaced. By the time they were finally finished, the estimated value of the stolen goods was staggering. Initially reported at £14 million, with some suggesting it could be even higher. They had pulled off one of the largest burglaries in English legal history, but for all their old-school experience and meticulous planning, the gang made a series of surprisingly simple, almost amateurish mistakes. They failed to properly disable certain security cameras, leaving behind crucial footage of their movements. They were careless with forensics, leaving behind tools and other evidence that could be traced back to them. And most importantly, they couldn't keep quiet. In the days and weeks following the heist, they talked, they bragged, they argued about how to split the loot. Unbeknownst to them, the police were already closing in, and their phone calls and conversations were being recorded. The surveillance tapes were pure gold for the investigators. Listening in, the police quickly realized something very unusual was going on. This wasn't a gang of hardened young criminals speaking in code. It sounded like a group of old friends bickering, joking, and complaining about their aching backs and health problems, all while casually discussing the logistics of a multi-million-pound burglary. It was surreal. Within a few weeks, the police had gathered enough evidence to identify and arrest the main suspects. The media went into a frenzy. The headlines were sensational, dubbing the group the Grandpa Gang and the Diamond Weasel. The public was absolutely captivated and couldn't believe that men of that age, some of whom were receiving pensions, had the nerve and the physical ability to pull off such a daring and physically demanding crime. The story was stranger than fiction. During the trial, the full picture emerged. The motivations were a mix of pure greed, a potent dose of boredom in retirement, and for some, a burning desire for one last big score, a final, spectacular act to cap off a lifetime of crime. It was about proving they still had what it took. Although the police did a fantastic job recovering a portion of the stolen goods, a significant amount of the treasure was never found. Investigators believe it was quickly hidden, sold off through private networks, or passed on to other associates before the arrests were made. The mystery of the missing millions adds another layer of legend to the story. Ultimately, the men were found guilty and sentenced to prison, their advanced age and poor health not enough to spare them from justice. For some, it meant they would almost certainly spend their final years behind bars. The Hatton Garden heist became legendary, not because it was flawless, but because it so completely defied every expectation we have about who commits major crimes. It proved that crime doesn't always look the way we imagine it in movies. Sometimes, it wears old clothes, moves slowly, and complains about the noise while drilling through half a meter of solid concrete. It was a robbery planned with the patience of a lifetime, executed with stubborn, old-fashioned determination, and ultimately undone by simple, ultra-human error. It serves as a fascinating reminder that no matter how much experience or confidence someone has, no crime is ever truly perfect. If you enjoyed this incredible true story, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell for more real events that sound like they were ripped straight from a Hollywood script. Because sometimes, the most unbelievable heists are carried out by the people you would least expect. Thanks for watching.